So can you, Fabrice, talk about the evolution of the range for the winery? It has evolved from having a very classical kind of like reserve cuvée, and then a blanc de blanc, and then a prestige cuvée, and now you have completely changed the range from what your father has done. Can you talk about first the regional blend of the Grand Valais and the evolution of that wine from what it used to be in your father's time to how it has evolved now under your leadership?
So, many wine growers which begin to make champagne after the wars just make a copy of what the big brand makes. So, classic system of a brand with a reserve, prestige, Grand Cru or Premier Cru vineyard, rosé, but not a specific vision of the geography. And the characteristic of our vineyard, our domain, is that my grandfather and my father really built the domain around Marais-sur-Aille. So actually we cultivate 8 hectares, 4 hectares in Marais-sur-Aille and 4 hectares in other villages around. We cultivate in 7 villages and 45 plots, so many different origins of grape. So when I see this, I say we really can have another vision of the brand and put the geography on the center. And I a little bit copy the Burgundian system, where you have regional, village, and Premier Cru and Grand Cru wines. But I do that when I learn all the vineyard I have in my domain. I understand we could make the same system. So that's how I imagine a geographic system of the brand with Grand Valais, which is the most important cuvée and which represents the vision of the Vallée de la Marne with the grape varieties we have in our domain. And after, we have a village champagne, which only comes from Marais-sur-Aille because it's the most important village we have. And after, we make a focus on different lieux-dits or single vineyard to show what taste could give the chalk, for example, in Montagne de Reims in Tauxières, and what could give the clay and the limestone from Festini on the Pinot Meunier, and to show you the origin is more important than the grape taste.
Okay, I'm recording. You want to say hello?
Hello,
your name?
hello. I am Fabrice Pouillon.
Perfect. Good. Thank you, Fabrice. I wanted to start by asking you a little bit more about the method Fabrice Pouillon, how you came to the idea and how it works.
So we begin with the method Fabrice Pouillon. Yeah. Okay. So when I begin to make wine with my parents, I want to make more focus on the soil and the specific single vineyard system. But I understand that in my vineyard, I have some ones who regularly has a very high level of sugar when we make the harvest at the right maturity. So I wanted to make single vineyard, but the problem is that with a classic method Champenoise system, we could add a very high level of alcohol because the classic system adds some sugar, which elevates the alcohol. So I wanted to find a way to make a single vineyard specifically with high level of sugar. So that's why I imagine to keep the sugar from the grape. So I make different experimentation, but I really wanted to keep the identity from the vineyard. So for me, keeping the juice to make the second fermentation with the sugar from the grape was really the best choice. So that's how I imagine this system, method Fabrice Pouillon, where we kept the juice when we press the grape. We keep the juice not fermented, so we use frost to keep the juice not fermented. And after vinification of the rest of the wines, when we make the bottling, we use the juice from the same vineyard to make the second fermentation. And during this time, we keep the natural yeast because we make the first fermentation with the natural yeast. And I think the natural yeast are the more able to make the fermentation in the first and in the second time. So that's why we keep the natural yeast from the first fermentation to make the second fermentation, the prise de mousse, with the yeast from the harvest. And that's how we make a real link between the first and the second fermentation, because it's the same juice and same yeast which ferment in 2 times.
Perfect. So you've also developed a new way of pressing grapes that is different than the traditional way. You still use the Cocard press, which is traditional, but you've decided instead of doing a pressing for the Cour de Cuvée and the Taille, you now do a different method. Can you talk about how you arrived at that idea and explain the pressing method?
Yeah, so first, keeping the coca pressing for me was the first step to understand how we need to press the grape, because it's the only press where you have the gravity, the juice way, and the pressing force, which are on the same way, from up to down. So it's really interesting because it helps to extract the juice from the different parts of the berry in a very organized cycles. And it helps too to have a very clean juice, because the juice is naturally filtered by all the grape which are inside the coca press. So for me, keeping coca press is really first step to understand how we can extract the juice. And we make a constat that in a berry there is different area. We show that because when we make the pressing in the classing champenoise system, the cuvée is composed by different press and different size of press. So, and this constat is different for each grape, so each grape varieties and each origin of grape. So my mind was to understand how we can extract the juice from the different area of the berry, to respect the anatomy of the berry and to respect the composition of each different juice. So we know that there is three parts in a berry. So the juice from the pulp, the juice from the skin, and the juice from the seed. And these three parts give different composition to the juice. The sugar level is different, the acidity level is different, the phenolic, the tannins, the minerals are differently composed in this different juice. And for me, it's important to separate this juice, the origin of the juice inside the berry, because I wanted to adapt the vinification of each juice, because the taste is different and the oxidation need to be different. So in our system, we press the grape by respect a time and a pressure. And we increase the level of pressure all during the pressing with the coca press. Each retrousse separates the part of the berry. So the first press is composed by the juice from the pulp. When we finish to press the grape after 30 minutes with a determinate level of pressure, we make the retrousse, we mix the grape, and we press again with a higher level of pressure. And this helps us to extract the juice from the skin. And the last step is the juice from the seed. And that's how we could have different size of part, because the size and the composition of the berry is different. The anatomy of the berry is different if it's a Chardonnay, if it's a Pinot Noir, if it comes from the chalk, or if it comes from the clay.
Okay, and then you keep those pressings separate and you ferment them separately, correct?
Yes. So each juice is separated during the pressing, and after we fill the barrels, each part is separate in the barrels. So I want to adapt the vinification process from each part of the press separately. So we adapt the size of the barrel, we adapt the time we let into the barrels, and we adapt specifically the oxidation that we need to do, because the composition of the berry is different, and we have oxidable molecule, but in a different way from each juice. And my objective is to give the best expression and the best focus to the mineral part of each juice. And that's how we can do that, by adapting the oxidation. And after aging, we have the possibility to blend or not to blend each different part of this juice. So we can use the first part, the second part, the third part in different blend or different cuvée.
So you can do a blending approach with a single vineyard philosophy.
Yes, exactly. We keep the system of blending, but using it in a single vineyard composition.
Great. Okay. Fabrice, can you please talk about the importance of the vineyard Chemin du Bois? It was 20 years ago this year, so in 2005, that you started to imagine a new system of doing the secondary fermentation, and it came from this particular parcel in your home village. So what is special about Chemin du Bois, and how did it spark your imagination for the new method, Fabrice Pouillon?
Chemin du Bois is one of our oldest vintage. And the vines in this vineyard, for me, is very nice vines because it always produces very concentrated grape. The grape are always very small. The yield was good, and the concentration and the level of maturity is always very high. So in '04, when we make the harvest, I understand that we could make a single vineyard in this vineyard, but with no sugar added because the level of sugar is naturally high when we make the harvest. So that's how I imagine the method Fabrice Pouillon, which only use the sugar from the grape for the second fermentation and the yeast from the grape for the second fermentation. It's really the original beginning of method Fabrice Pouillon in Chemin du Bois. But after many years of making Chemin du Bois with the method Fabrice Pouillon, I understand that the global warming really impacted the maturity and the sugar level for all vineyards in Champagne. And in our domain, with the other vision of maturity based on the taste of the berry, we now regularly harvest the grape with a level of sugar around 12. So it's enough to make first and second fermentation with the sugar from the grape. And that's how I imagine to make method Fabrice Pouillon for all the production of the domain since the 19 vintage. And this for me is very interesting to make more focus on the origin of the grape because it gives more purity to the wine with the second fermentation, which is more natural because using the sugar and the yeast from the grape.
Can you talk a little bit about what is special about Blanchiens? It was one of the first single parcel wines that your father or your grandfather developed. It wasn't labeled Blanchiens, but he separated it for a reason. Why was that?
So it was the first vineyard of my grandparents. So there is a lot of sentiment, happiness for this vineyard, and it's probably one of the best part of the village because it's located in the middle of the coast of Mareuil-sur-Aille. The soil is displayed as a combination of clay on the top and chalk on the bottom. So with surf exposition, so it's always helps the vineyard to extract a maximum of information and both information from the clay and for the chalk. And my father make a classic system of range, but he understand that Les Blanchiens is one of the best vineyard of his domain. So that's why he began to make a single vineyard cuvée. So he do not put the name of the vineyard on the label, but he imagined a cuvée like was made in the past. So the best plot of Mareuil-sur-Aille, and he called Fleur de Mareuil, so the best vineyard of Mareuil. And when I become to work with him, I understand Blanchien was very best plot in our domain, but we have other ones like Chemin du Bois and like Les Valnons, and that's how I imagine to put the name of the vineyard on the label to help the people to understand that the taste is different, is the place is different.
Great, and then let's talk about Solera because that is a unique champagne. There are very few Solera champagnes that are available on the market. And yours is one of the oldest. It started, you labeled it from beginning in 1997, but you know that it started before 1997. So can you talk about how this wine was developed by your father and then how you changed the direction of the Solera?
So the Solera began in our domain because my father always kept some reserved wine to make the blend of the non-vintage. And one time, when he tasted the reserve wine, so the Solera, he said, but this wine is ready for bottling. Why we continue to add some new wines? We can use this wine alone. And that's for me the biggest difference between Solera system and Reserve Perpetuel system. In the Solera system, we only use the reserved wine, and we don't blend the new wine before the bottling, but after the bottling into the barrel. So that's how my father began. Probably in the 90s, I don't really know exactly. I know 97 because I work in 98. And since this time, I give more rules to our Solera process. So all the wines, all the vintage are blended together in the big foudre we take 30% of the blend every year to make the bottling, and we fill the food with wines from the last harvest, which are vinified in oak barrels. So always 30% are added every year of the new vintage. So now it's from 1997 up to 24, and it never stops, I hope. And the objective of this Solera system is really to put more focus on the place. So Marais-sur-Aille, it's a cuvée village, so different plots of Marais-sur-Aille, and with no effect of the vintage, because you have too many vintage blended together. So it helps to put more focus on the place and not on the vintage. And the second thing is that we always blend equivalent part of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, 50-50. So it helps to put a focus on the place, because there is not one grape which take more place than the other one.
So you are always innovating. You like to experiment with things. You like to try new things. Two questions. Let me start by asking, you don't seem to be afraid of making a mistake. You are willing to kind of say that way was not the best way and I will try a new way. So what is it about your spirit or about your philosophy that gives you the flexibility to constantly change and innovate?
But it's really my personality. When I begin to work with my parents, I changed a little bit during my university way. So at the beginning, I don't really go into the vineyard, and after I say yes, I can work in the vineyard with my parents. But because they accept that I could change many things, and my personality is really to always experiment and trying to find the best way. And I am always satisfied with my work. I always think I could make better things. And found probably new system, new experimentation to give to the vineyard the best place and to make the most great wines. For me, my job is only to make great wines and to make great grape before. So I wanted to find many things to go on this way. So that's why in the farming, in the vinification, I can make many experimentation, which sometimes could be crazy, but I don't want to have the mind that I regret not experiment something. So if I know it's a bad choice, okay, I go to another experimentation.
Okay, and last question, since you like to experiment a lot, I have to imagine that there are secrets and new things that will come from you in the future. Can you share a little bit about what you have maybe hidden away in the cellar that we might see in the coming years?
So one of the actual experimentation is distillation. We begin to make distillations probably since 7 or 8 years. So I distillate, I understand what is distillation. It's totally different than fermentation. So I really want to understand what could be distillation, and probably in the future there will be some product with distillation from the estate. And another very beginning experimentation is to vinify other grape than Champagne. So I know the chalk, I know my region, I know the grape from Champagne, and I really want to know if the work I do in my vineyard has the same impact in our region. So that's really another project, but we are very at the beginning of this experimentation.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Fabrice. We appreciate your time and have a great Fête de Champagne.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.